Hello and welcome to another episode of Younger by the Minute. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Speiser, and I'm always here with my other host,
Jennifer Speiser, and we have a lot of exciting things to talk about.
Yeah, we just came off the A4M Longevity Conference in Las Vegas, and it was a really good conference first and foremost. I love going to these things because you get to learn new protocols, you get to see all the new devices and techniques and stuff that's coming out. And I think for us this weekend wasn't just about trends. I think it was more about confirmation that medicine is finally shifting towards finding and fixing the root cause versus just addressing the symptoms. It was about resilience and just about long-term vitality.
Yeah, I mean, our philosophy for over a decade has been starting with really nutrition and fitness, and then expanding into aesthetics and growing into, actually, I should say more than a decade, but growing into the full precision medicine. And what's crazy is when you created precision, you had
Right.
no idea that this is where we would end up, and this is also where medicine would end up.
Yeah, no,
You know,
it's 2011.
well, precision medicine though is actually now a term, and it's something that we've been focusing on. And they really dove into gut health and how muscle equals longevity, and those are the things that we've been saying all along. Which it was really cool because it was very validating, but
Correct.
then we also took some really key pieces away that are going to help us yield even better
Yeah.
patient outcomes.
Yeah, we always walk away with some really good nuggets, on there. And like you had said, it's a lot of the stuff. It's really good to see the emphasis and how they're talking about the importance of gut microbiome, its importance of adrenals, and the fact of how much stress really correlates into everything, and that these things need to be looked at and addressed before really even getting into sex hormones. And it's something I know I've been talking heavily on my social media page for a good 3+ years. And it's been ever since we've incorporated precision medicine into our practice, it's been the root of it is addressing the gut, addressing the adrenals, going after the thyroid, optimizing those things, rechecking in and getting new levels on blood work, and then going after sex hormones.
Yeah, because if the gut's off or the person is systemically inflamed, mostly probably because the gut is off, they're not going to become metabolically optimized. Like you've got to almost like clean out. Now you're the mechanic here, so I'm going to probably butcher this, but it's like you got to do a engine cleaning or an oil. Like what would you do before you put fresh oil in? You got to like clean it out, right?
Yeah, you pop the drain plug and drain the oil out.
But if you have dirty oil, it's really hard to get the engine to
Correct. Yeah.
run.
Yeah. There's other things you need to do to get all the grime out of the lifters and all that stuff. But it's even when we talk about gut health, right? And we know that the gut is the second brain. We know that it produces a lot of serotonin. So then when you look at the advertising of testosterone, one of the symptoms of low T is depression. Well, so is poor gut health. Depression, because you're not producing the serotonin that you would if your gut was optimized. So, you're fixing a symptom with one thing when it could be completely something different.
Well, yeah. And also, you have your 4 organs of excretion. So if the gut's off, which is an organ of excretion, the liver's off, and the liver being dirty, for lack of a better word or term, if that's off, you're not going to be able to break down things that you put in your body correctly. And so then you're really going to end up just doing yourself a disservice. You can actually create an influx of those hormones, or if the patient has MTHFR and they can't genetically break down certain medications, they can start to have a surge of those hormones, and then they're going to have less than desirable outcomes. And so I think that's really what was really cool, and where it seems like the medical world is really the path that they're paving, and why it feels different is because that focus on precise medical treatment. So you're looking at the individual and you are getting to the root cause, and then you're having to look at all of these different puzzle pieces to then put that specific puzzle back together. Your pieces are different than my pieces, and so on and so forth. So being able to do some specialized testing, which is what we're going to now offer, or even be able to utilize things that can truly have real-time data on someone's blood glucose when we're utilizing certain peptides. It's really important because we're making a very precise plan for their specific puzzle.
Right. And even when they got into the inflammation, again, we've talked heavily on inflammation and what is causing inflammation within the body, dietary choices, alcohol, um, not optimizing your sleep, stress, unresolved stress, like you're not managing your stress. I think I said alcohol, but there's several factors that go into that. But the thing you have to remember is that's all changing the gut microbiome,
Mhm.
and also the gut microbiome is a cause. It's not just a consequence. Disease is not just a genetic, hormonal, or immune. Disease is not often the downstream result of microbiome imbalance, but think of it in terms of prebiotic forces which support life, diversity, and regulation. It's also like an antibiotic force which kills, suppresses, and fragments ecosystems. So every choice of food that you eat has an impact. Every time that you eat changes the gut microbiome. Every time with that, stress, sleep timing, and medications all have impact on this.
Yeah, and if you try to just go ahead and fix it on your own, sometimes the microbiome already has such its own network of its own personality. Like you have you as a being, but then you also have this other living entity inside of you, which is your gut microbiome. And so then if you're overloaded with candida or SIBO or SIFO and you keep feeding that bad bacteria, it's really impossible. And they have a conscience, as do parasites.
Right.
Parasites have their own conscience.
Correct.
So, it's interesting, but we're not alone in our own bodies, and we have to remember that. And unfortunately, the stripped soil and the lack of nutrient dense food and all these other things are absolutely killing our gut microbiome. And then it's causing a cascade effect. You have uncontrolled inflammation, you have endocrine disruption, you have a variety of other things that then also feed mental wellness and mental vigor and just in the decline, like we're going to have a rebound effect of what's going to happen later if people don't really understand what they're doing now.
Right. I know I sat out on one of the lectures too, and the one they really tapped into again, which is something we've talked about, is the vagus nerve. And that's kind of like the missing therapy,
Mhm.
which you're seeing a lot of stuff come out on now. You're seeing more and more on social media. You're seeing more and more ads. You're seeing it's just being talked about more in general. But, you got to understand that it's the most powerful microbiome intervention. It's going to cause chronic stress. It turns off digestion. It reduces microbial diversity, and it promotes inflammation.
Well, just think about it. So now we all have some sort of vagal tone dysregulation.
Correct.
As someone that has had severe consequences to having their vagus nerve go haywire, I understand that. I mean, the gut dysbiosis is insane to the point of constipation for days. And so what happens is the vagus nerve is also partly responsible for gut peristalsis. And when we shallow breathe and we're not getting enough breath and we're not oxygenating, but also expanding our diaphragms, it starts to dysregulate that vagus nerve. So then now combine that with someone who's finally had enough and now they're on too high of a dose of a GLP-1.
Mhm.
What's their food doing? It's literally sitting inside of them and rotting. It's not, it's becoming these issues and they're becoming toxic. And so a lot of people don't realize that when we're constipated, you're recycling bad estrogen. So while the whole topic of HRT being bad for so long and how detrimental it was to the female population in medicine because they completely halted all research on women's health due to these black box warnings that were false, we now have recycled estrogen. It's just a mess. And it becomes a situation where unopposed estrogen can really be detrimental to breast tissue, ovarian tissue, and things like that. And unfortunately, that estrogen is not even the estrogen that's going to keep your heart or your brain safe.
Right. And you brought up a good point about just food, just sitting the digestions, because as humans, we're not designed to ferment protein and fat in the
No.
colon. Protein should be digested, they should be absorbed, and they should be metabolized before ever reaching the colon. Undigested protein in the colon equals inflammation. Some people will feel better on a carnivore diet at first, but then over time they start to feel worse, especially if they're on a GLP-2 or GLP-3, which sometimes in some cases they'll be better on a GLP-1, like semaglutide, Ozempic, when it's first phase. But the important thing with that is, again, we come back to the gut, and having a healthy gut all starts with having the proper amount of stomach acid in the stomach to break down and digest the food so it doesn't sit there and ferment and turn into SIBO, SIFO, which then turns into what everybody knows mainstream or doctors diagnose you with: acid reflux, GERD, leaky gut, or IBS.
Well, and the thing is the biggest thing that people want to do when they start to have acid reflux is turn to a PPI or a proton pump inhibitor. And what that actually is doing is making a bigger situation, because now you're suppressing even more of the body's ability to produce stomach acid. So it becomes this vicious cycle. And the thing is I think this is why A4M felt different this year, was because they had lectures on how bad PPIs can be. They had lectures on how to do things the safe way. And if we aren't educating other physicians this way, then who's going to help patients? And then how do we get there? Because we are in a country where we're kind of run by big pharma in general. And that's, people, the healthcare system makes more money off sick people than healthy people at this time.
Right. And there's one other lecture too that I just really wish I could have been live on social media. I would just love around and say it, but they were talking about hormones and the microbiome, and hormonal imbalance is rarely primary. It's rarely the primary cause. It's estrogen, thyroid, cortisol issues often stem from microbiome imbalance, impaired detoxification, and inflammation. Examples of that, it comes back to painful, heavy periods, PCOS, Hashimoto's, and endometriosis. But by improving the microbiome diversity, often reduces these menstrual pains, improves ovulation, and lowers autoimmune markers. So again, coming back to, you can't really properly prescribe sex hormones if you haven't fixed the other things first that are downregulating the number on the blood panel that you're now prescribing the HRT with.
Or at the very least, which is what we do, if you are that symptomatic, that you are having insomnia or vaginal dryness and it's affecting your marriage and all of these things, you can treat the symptoms while you treat the root cause. You can do it at the same time, but you have to do both. And then you have to watch the doses that you started that patient with, because they might not needing that high of a dose once everything else does fall into place. And as someone who has been dysregulated, I do believe that it probably all happened with my gut first, and then it got worse because I was prescribed birth control pills, and then I completely went into adrenal fatigue. I mean, that's the point that I'm trying to say, though. Some people do have a good microbiome and they need something else fixed.
Correct.
But at the same time, it's what is the root cause and how are we getting to the root cause? And how does your assessment address the root cause? Some people, because they're so adapted to their gut dysbiosis, they don't even realize that they are having gut issues. I can't tell you how many patients are like, no, I don't get bloating, distension, or anything. And then as I dig in a little bit more, they're like, oh, well, actually that food bothers me, or that food bothers me. They're just so used to it.
Right. 100%. And I think that even, what you're talking about with that even correlates into something that's really trending right now, is just peptides in general. Peptides they're new to social media. They're new to the public, but they're not new to how long they've been around. Because some of them have been around for over 50 plus years. But also, you got to remember, peptides are messengers. But in order for them to work, then it needs to be in the right environment. Like the gut and everything needs to be prepared in order for the messaging to be clear. Think of like a bad telephone game, right? You keep going, it eventually gets the original message gets lost. Well, if your body is completely inflamed, if a gut is off and then the peptide as a messenger can't really.
Doesn't know where to go.
Right. It's bouncing.
It's like, what fire is bigger? Where do I need to go?
It's bouncing off several versus what it's supposed to be is a direct pathway to the problem. It's just getting bad intel along the way.
The good news is though, because they do treat systemically and very safely, like with a very low side effect or adverse event profile. In some cases, there's 0 adverse event profiles, like with BPC 157, which, like you said, it's been around since the Cold War, which actually is made up of gastric juices and these peptides that come from. Peptides are small chains of amino acids that come from protein that are actually naturally occurring in the body. So the body recognizes them very well. And so unlike medications that you take, You're not trading one thing for another. You're not like, if you listen to all the fast talkers at the end of the commercials, it's like, here, this might help you with your erectile dysfunction, but you could drop dead of a heart attack at the same time. Like,
Correct.
you're not trading one thing for another that could actually be significantly worse than what it is that you're trying to treat.
Right.
So it's nice because they do go in there. But what is cool about what you're talking about is, yes, it might not know where to go. The patient is still going to feel better because, say, if it is the gut, it's going to bring down systemic inflammation, which therefore will help increase healing time, and then also help with pains or whatever that they might have. Because, again, back to what we've been talking about, systemic inflammation is honestly the root cause, and inflammation is also what causes aging. So when you look at the disease process of aging,
insulin resistance.
it's all these things. Well, then insulin resistance also accelerates aging. It's like
Correct.
everything. It's just, you end up creating a whole systemic trash can fire that you can't get out.
And you are right. It's like they will still work,
Mm-hmm.
right? But for the cost you're going to spend on that, it's not going to be a quick fix. It's not the end all be all, but to maximize the ROI, make sure that when you're using them or going to start using them, that you put yourself and your body in a good environment to properly absorb and utilize them to the max.
100%. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think what really providers need to really pay attention to, and what patients need to look for when they're looking at providers, is, are you treating my symptoms, or are you trying to look more at the systems? And, what you can't just treat them. And it's not just the precision medicine, preventative medicine, whatever you want to call it, functional medicine. It's not just this woo-woo thing. It's a real thing that needs to be talked about, because if you go back to the grassroots of, making sure that you're eating superfoods, making sure that you're getting plenty of sleep, making sure that you're hydrating, if you do all those things, you're going to be far more ahead than other people around you, or even what you could be yourself. I mean, you're going to create issues if you don't eat right or sleep well.
Correct. And I think another big part of the conference too was the trade show. The amount of technology that's out now.
I know I wanted everything.
Yeah, PEMFEDs, not hydrogen, but oxygen,
HBOTs and red lights.
It was all awesome, and you just got to remember, even like with the Stella program that I've created, through Precision technology, it gives you insight, it gives you data, and the data has no emotion. It's kind of like when you run a business and stuff, like when you look at numbers are factual. There's no emotion behind it. The issue comes with some technology, like was it the Whoop and the Apple Watch and stuff like that? Just like the scale, people get obsessed, with it, and they truly don't understand the data that's coming back out of it. So make sure that when you're using these things, that the data that you're getting and the information that you're getting out of it, that you're making decisions, the right decisions, but most importantly, like, don't get anxious about it. It's easier said than done,
Well, but you're right.
Go ahead.
You're right, because if you're stressing about that, you're still stressing your body out.
Right.
So it's like, sometimes I have to tell myself that, like, okay, like, do you really want to, like, you're creating your own stress here. And that's the thing. I want people to understand, take the power back. You have the power to have full autonomy in, when you go to the doctor's office. You have the power to ask the questions and to not allow the paternal relationship that happens with some patient-provider relationships. They're a doctor, and yes, they went to medical school, but medicine is forever evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not open-minded enough, they've lost track of what they signed up for from the beginning, because this is the evolution of medicine. It's been since day one. We did, when we made penicillin, it's all these different discoveries, and that's what makes it fun. And there are so many things out there. And, I said earlier that aging is a disease process, and you were talking about measurables. One of the really cool things to do is to test your biological age.
Yeah.
You can be chronologically in age, but that doesn't mean that your body is that age, whether it's good or
You
bad.
could be older or not as old.
Right. So, they are these things. And so that is just a number. And longevity comes from slowing down the damage, not just chasing youth. And that even comes from mitochondrial dysfunction and really understanding that metabolic dysfunction is one of those drivers, along with inflammation being the accelerator of degeneration, because that's what's going to break down telomeres. That's what's going to shorten them. So then your lifespan is going to be shorter. That's what's going to cause you to be fatigued at a cellular level, which is going to then cause you to have thyroid issues and other issues, which then you start to drink more energy drinks and take things to wake up. And it becomes this vicious cycle that you have to get out of.
Right. And then, another big topic out there was about GLPs and where they're at. And it is awesome to hear so many of these people speaking highly about them. But again, they always came back to properly using them, properly being educated on, getting the right blood work and stuff like that, and utilizing a CGM, which is one of the things that we've done, because what I realized, that the GLPs are not going anywhere. They're here. People want them. They're going to use them. So the best thing we can do is educate them. And instead of going at it and arguing, I shouldn't say arguing, but trying to, it comes across as it's my opinion of this and my opinion of that. The CGM gives us factual data. So if someone is on a GLP and they don't want to listen, thinking that, well, I can still eat 1 or 2 meals a day and I'm fine. Well, that Stello is going to come out and show them that how low they're actually running. And then we can correlate to them like the data is showing you're running too low for too long and you're creating damage, because now we can see it in your blood work too.
Can you explain really quickly also, so people understand, because you brought it up earlier, protein is supposed to be absorbed and digested right away. And your entire body is made up of like water and protein and yes, some fat, but like you need protein. It's the building block of everything. A lot of times when people are not getting, anytime someone's not getting adequate nutrition, whether they're out training it, whether they're starving themselves, whether they're whatever, they become what's known as catabolic. And that's why people are getting Ozempic face and Ozempic butt, because their body is smarter than they are, or all of us is. It's your body will always do whatever it needs to do to survive. So instead of burning fat, you start to burn muscle.
Correct. And like I said before, there's no difference between someone being on 90 milligrams of Adderall, there's someone on phentermine, or on the billion-dollar industry of fat burners, where they're everything is an appetite suppressant, where people are eating 1 or 2 meals a day. They're not hitting their protein requirement, but they're still weightlifting 30 minutes to an hour. They're still doing 30 minutes to an hour of cardio. The outcome is going to be the same, whether they're on the GLP, they're on the Adderall, they're on the phentermine, or they're on a fat burner, or they have an eating disorder. The outcome is going to be the same. And Dr. Gabrielle Lyons brought up something the way I've been doing nutrition for the longest time is, whenever I look at someone's caloric intake needs, it's a multiplier times their weight, and that's where I'll get the caloric intake need. But I never look at protein as a percentage, because what's what they teach you in dietary? It's 0.8 kilograms per pound of weight. Well, that by that standard, that's the minimum. That's the thing that people didn't realize. That's a minimum number. Kind of like when you drink half your body weight in ounces of water. That's the minimum requirement of water. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be drinking more. That's just a good basis of figuring out what's the minimum amount you need to function for the day. The way I've always done it is exactly the way that she described it. It's 1 gram to 1.25 gram per lean body mass, not weight, but per lean body mass. That is your number. Then you can take that number times 4. So like if you figure out that you're lean.
So like say I'm 138, but then I'm really like 124.
Let's say, you're 138 in weight. Then say your lean body mass is probably say around 110. We'll just do it times the 1. That's 110. Take that times 4. Well, that's 440 calories. Now I can subtract that out from, say, an 1,800 calorie diet or a 2,200, whatever the number is. Now I can do a percentage based on fat, based on carbs, based on body type, based on activity, based on insulin resistant or insulin sensitivity, our hormones, thyroid. What is all that? Is that optimized? Is it unoptimized? Am I building them up from 1 meal a day to 4 meals a day or 3 meals a day? What that plays a factor on how I figure out the rest of that caloric intake. But for protein, I've always never done it as a percentage of 15 to 25% of the diet. I've always done it at a gram per point, 1.25 grams per lean body weight. And then I adjust the fat and the carbs based on the energy expenditure on the individual.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. I think that people aren't getting, like, they're only looking at calories. They're not looking at what's going to sustain them. And so then they're just still not eating right for whatever their plan is, whether they're on a GLP or not.
And that's what we said before. Like, if you're just going to count calories, well, hell, you could hit your caloric intake with 2 slices of pizza in a day, but that ain't going to get you towards your goal.
No.
Ain't going to lean you out. That isn't going to build muscle, but you hit your caloric intake. Making up your macronutrients is important, but like we said in previous episodes, really honing in and making sure your micronutrients are getting hit along with your macronutrients that are being adjusted based on how you lean out and how your activity is, and then based on your labs and how they improve or wherever they're sitting at.
Well, and that's the other thing. So micronutrients are lacking in almost every person's diet at this point due to the quality of food in this country. And those micronutrient deficiencies over time is what's leading to hypertension, to a whole bunch of other things, because we need those minerals and the things that come from that. And we're inadequate in them. So that's where the slow increase of disease processes comes from.
Right.
And, and that's the other thing I want to make it known, like precision medicine, part of the definition is that it adapts as the patient evolves. So you start, you might start here, even with your meal plans, they change. And so everything's customizable and everything is starting with the root cause, and then it's going to become more foundational. And that's the thing that I really want listeners to know, like, when we do labs, for example, I'm excited for January's labs that I'm going to do. I'm actually going to pull serum, salivary, and urine and put my panels up and do a video of them so people can see, because you have to utilize different measurables in different ways to really get a true understanding. Like with glucose, there's a short window of time. So when you get a glucose on a serum blood panel, it's very variable. So insulin is much more reliable than glucose. But when you're wearing a continuous glucose monitor, you get that snapshot of how you're moving in through the day. So you get to hone in on what foods are spiking you, if stress is spiking you, or when you get too low. But, they have to, or like if you ate a really fatty meal and then got your lipids done, your triglycerides. So you've got to take into consideration the variables when you get those labs. And for females, a lot of people don't know that you really need to go on day between 19 and 22 to get an accurate progesterone level unless you're on contraceptive or you're postmenopausal. Right. So it's just, you're just going off of these ranges, and then a lot of times they're not looking at the symptoms and they're just like, oh, well, your ranges are normal and You're fine.
Right. And I think that's some of the new stuff that's coming. We're bringing back a lot to precision, which is why I love going to these conferences, because, there are things we learn. There are things that are validated that we've been doing that validate we've been going the right direction. We've been teaching our clients the right way. And, we're going to be doing a deeper dive into some genetic testing and integration. We're going to be comparing those genetics with blood work, gut testing, the CGM testing. Also, obviously looking at clinical response. But we're very excited going into 2026 and all the new things that we can bring and offer our clients, and better us as providers, and give a better service to our clients, and really be a platform to help people advocate for themselves and be a resource for them to learn something, maybe to do it a different way.
Absolutely, because even for like the precision medicine is actually now the root of like the tree trunk or the roots of our entire practice. Because if your physiology is in alignment and everything's working the way it should, then your aesthetic outcomes are going to be even better, because you have the things that you need to support, whether it's from cellular nutrition. So when you do procedures like regenerative injectables or microneedling or anything that you're doing to try to provoke new cells to form and grow by the wound response, you have to have cells that have proper nutrition, or they're not going to do their job effectively. Or if you're somebody that is too catabolic and you're trying to put filler in somebody, or if they are postmenopausal and you're trying to stimulate collagen, you're just going to keep hitting your head against the wall. just on the other side of that, the fitness. If you're too catabolic, if you are postmenopausal, if you're not hormonally aligned, then your results are going to take longer or just not get there. So, in order for everything to be in alignment and for you to get the best results and to have the the life that you want for as long as you want, you have to start with precision medicine.
100%. Now, let's say as we wrap up today's episode, I know you're in the same boat. Just want to say how grateful we are for spaces like A4M, AMMG, spaces that bring together people who are like-minded, asking better questions about health and how they can do better within their practice. I will say, like when we started going this like 5-6 years ago, there were like 200 or 300 people. I know in that one lecture room, there's probably about 2,000 to 3,000 people in
It's
there.
wild.
So it was really great to see that.
People from other countries. Like I met a doctor from Mexico, and it was cool to see.
Yeah, it's really growing some legs, and I'm really happy to see that. And I will say we've been building precision with this philosophy for well over a decade. Started with fitness when it was just me, and then fitness and nutrition, I should say. And then we expand that when we opened up in 2014 into the aesthetics, and then we've grown it into a full precision medicine, as you put it, on that part of it. But as we call it now and everything, it's precision life, because we really are trying to coach and teach people a long-term lifestyle that's doable, that it's not just a cyclical diet or a cyclical thing that you do just because you got some bad news or just because you have some form of an event coming up.
Well, no, and that's why our logo is the way it is. It's all connected. Every piece is connected and it's all encompassing. And it's because it is. We're working on mind, body, spirit. We're working on the physiology from the inside out and really trying to help people live their best life.
Right. All right. Well, that wraps up another episode. We appreciate you tuning in as always. I'm Jamie Speiser. I'm out.
I'm Jennifer Speiser, and thank you.